A woman from my Bible study left a gift at my desk this week at Mercy Hospital in the spiritual care department with a note attached. She told me that her Legion of Mary group had made 240 rosaries of various colors, individually wrapped, for the patients as I made my rounds at the hospital each day as a chaplain. She remarked that in some small way she would be with me through the Spirit to bring hope and healing to God's people. What a beautiful, touching gesture to bring healing and hope. Because of sin, sickness, and suffering, death has entered our world. But this is overcome, though, through the glorious resurrection of Jesus Christ, the victor over sin and death. Jesus hears the cry of those who are in need. He heals the sick, and he raises the dead to new life. Jesus made himself poor, by emptying himself so that he might become rich. God has a preferential love for the sick. It's almost as if the VIPs of Jesus could be the sick. Jesus identified with the sick in the last judgment of Matthew chapter 25, verse 36, when he said, "I was sick, and you visited me." The book of wisdom today reminds us that God did not make death, but life, for here and the hereafter. God formed humans to be imperishable. Death seems to be a natural thing of everything in life, doesn't it? Everything dies. Plants die, animals die, seasons die, loved ones die, and human beings are no exception to the rule. We die, every one of us. Sinners experience death, an alienation from God, a rebellion, a separation. Life apart from God is death. Life united to God brings life. Death is certainly not part of God's plan, Solomon reminds us. It's the work of the prince of this world, namely Satan. Jesus cast out sickness and death, the effects of original sin, which were associated with the powers of the devil and his demons. Sick people at the time were thought to be in the hands of Satan. By raising a 12-year-old girl from the dead, Jairus' daughter, and the healing of a woman with a hemorrhage for 12 years, demonstrates that Jesus is more powerful than Satan is, as he wrests his people from his dominion and domination. St. Mark, in a very clever way, tells two stories in today's gospel. Very touching story of Jairus, the official, the ruler of the Capernaum synagogue. His daughter is very sick, even to the point of death. And immediately there's another story sandwiched by the evangelist about a woman hemorrhaging for 12 years. Jairus was so helpless and so desperate that he fell in prayer at the feet of Jesus and cried out. Jesus turned to Jairus and said to him, "Do not be afraid, just have faith." And so they continued their journey to Jairus' home. There in the home there was a great consternation, commotion, and uproar at the home, as there were professional mourners, family members and relatives, neighbors and friends, who were weeping and wailing loudly. Mourning was a sign of the traditional rite of passage. Mourning customs of wailing and crying loudly and flute playing were noises that were associated with the physical death that had occurred in a family. The mourner's great distress and commotion is offset by Jesus' calm and serene demeanor. Jesus told the mourners, "The child is not dead, but asleep." They jeered and laughed and ridiculed him, thinking, "Who is this jerk anyway?" Jesus took her by the hand, softly and gently. He spoke to her in a language she was familiar, Aramaic, and says those powerful words, Talitha kum, little girl, I say to you, arise. What a command. She got up immediately, kaiuthus in Greek, and began to walk. Imagine, all in the room were astonished at the sight, and Jesus ordered her family to get her something to eat. The woman suffering of 12 years of a bleeding disorder had a pitiful affliction. Jesus was given the same homage by this woman. She searched out every single doctor of her day. She had spent all that she had, and still her condition was no better. Many doctor bills, but no cure. In fact, things only grew worse. The third book of the Bible, the book of Leviticus, notes that a bleeding woman was considered ritually impure and thus was cut off from God and public worship and the fellowship of a local community that left one in isolation. So in her desperation, she decided secretly to stretch out to touch the hem of Jesus' garment, hoping for a cure, that she would be healed. Her faith was remarkable. The moment that she touched Jesus, Jesus was well aware that power had flown out of him and gone into her. That's what the sacraments do. Put us in touch with the power, a supernatural power, a divine power. Jesus touches us and we are touched in turn. She stepped out forward in fear and trembling and fell at the feet of Jesus, telling the whole truth. Jesus addressed her and said to her, "Daughter," indicating that she was a member of God's family. In the sight of everyone present, Jesus praised her great faith and rewarded her with a miraculous healing. We all need healed, don't we? Sickness and suffering and death are part of the landscape of life here on earth, a land of vulnerability. The great equalizer of life is the cross. Each of us have been branded or tattooed by the cross, a harsh reality of human existence. We understand in the human journey there are limitations. We encounter our frailty. We sense our own mortality. The Catechism of the Catholic Church in paragraph 1500 states that every illness can make us get a glimpse of death. Sickness can create a very special temptations within us. On the one hand, we may be inclined to give into anguish, self-pity, self-loathing, despair, and even anger and rebellion against God. On the other hand, suffering can be a catalyst for us. We can become stronger and better and more mature and more patient with ourselves and with others. It makes us more empathetic and compassionate with others. Compassion comes from the word womb, love. Suffering can refine us and purify us and strengthen us and even make us holy. Trust in the Lord is the key mantra of the book of Psalms and certainly the spiritual life. Trust in the Lord in all the circumstances of our lives, and most especially trust in the Lord at death. Jesus invites us and challenges us daily to trust and to walk in faith. If we search the healings of Jesus in the New Testament repeatedly, he rewards people's faith, which is vital to their healing. For instance, to the Canaanite woman, Jesus said, "Woman, great is your faith. Matthew 15:28. To the blind man Bartimaeus, Jesus said, your faith has saved you. In Mark 10:52. To the single leper who returned to give thanks to Jesus, Jesus said, stand up and go. Your faith has saved you. In Luke 17:19. And to the woman in today's gospel with the hemorrhage, for 12 years, Jesus says to her, daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Be freed from the burden of your affliction. And Jesus liberates her and sets her free. One of America's great preachers and pastors and prophets of the early 20th century was a Baptist minister, Harry Emerson Fosdick. He lived from 1878 to 1969. He ministered for many years in a church in Manhattan in New York. He said, fear imprisons, faith liberates. Fear paralyzes, faith empowers. Fear disheartens, faith encourages. Fear sickens, faith heals. Fear makes useless, faith makes serviceable. Let us place our confidence and trust in the Lord, as Jairus did for his dead daughter. And as the woman with the hemorrhage for 12 years reached down, may we throw ourselves at this Eucharistic gathering at the feet of Jesus for whatever cure that we seek, whether physical, emotional, mental, spiritually, or moral. Let us reach out and pray for those in need of the healing power and touch of Jesus in their lives. And may our plea be, Jesus, I will trust in you no matter what.